Welcome to the Guardianly Real Scam Stories podcast. Today, we're unpacking a viral phenomenon that's honestly pretty terrifying. Picture this. A commuter is just walking through a busy train station. Her card never leaves her pocket, her phone never leaves her hand. But by the time she gets home, her money has literally vanished. She checks her banking app, and there are all these random charges she never made. Now, the news and social media, they're calling this ghost tapping. Sounds like actual magic, right? Well, it's not. And understanding exactly how this trick works is absolutely your best defense against it.
So, the big question everyone is panicking over right now is this. Can a scammer really drain your bank account just by casually walking past you? The media loves to paint this as one single incredibly advanced high-tech hack. But the reality? The term ghost tapping is actually being used to describe two completely different scams, and they get dangerously mixed up all the time. And here's why that matters. If you mix these two up, you're going to end up trying to protect yourself against the totally wrong threat. Okay, let's dive into this. The two distinct threats we are looking at are proximity fraud and fake merchant fraud. With proximity fraud, scammers are exploiting technology to secretly charge a card that's just sitting in your pocket. But with fake merchant fraud, they're manipulating your psychology into willingly authorizing a payment that's wildly inflated. Basically, one happens completely behind your back, and the other happens right to your face. Let's transition into that first one, Scam 1. This is often called true NFC or the proximity threat. Imagine you're in a super dense crowd. The scammer essentially uses a mobile contactless payment reader, or really any NFC-capable device. They get physically close enough to your wallet or your purse to trigger a tap-to-pay transaction, all without you lifting a finger. This threat is mostly targeting those physical, contactless credit and debit cards that are just sitting there, waiting for a signal. Now, there is a massive point of technical confusion driving a lot of the panic here. A lot of people think scammers are just wirelessly downloading their entire credit card to use forever. But we have to understand the difference between NFC and EMV. NFC, that's simply the short-range radio wave. It's just the physical tech connecting the card to the reader. EMV, on the other hand, is the highly secure payment language being spoken over that radio wave. Modern EMV doesn't just broadcast your reusable card details out into the world. It actually generates a unique one-time use security code for every single transaction. So a single tap from some scammer brushing past you does absolutely not let them steal your credentials to go buy gift cards for the rest of the year. They're just trying to get one single immediate transaction approved. And unfortunately, they're attempting these single transactions at a massive scale. According to a 2024 UK finance report, there were 3.13 million confirmed unauthorized fraud cases in that year alone. That is a 14% jump from the previous year. What this tells us is that criminals are increasingly favoring high-volume, lower-value fraud over those elaborate Hollywood-style heists. They're casting a really wide net, just hoping for lots and lots of tiny successful hits. Which brings us to the actual charges you might see pop up. Scammers will often try to hit your card for really small amounts, like $1, $3, $8, or maybe $15. Why so small? Well, think of these charges as a scammer quietly knocking on your door. They're just testing to see if the card is active without making too much noise. These tiny transactions are way more likely to avoid PIN prompts. They fly right under the radar of automated fraud detection, and most importantly, they usually evade those instant bank alerts that would tip you off immediately.
So, the crucial point here is figuring out exactly how worried you should be about this first scam. If you read reports from media outlets quoting GuidePoint Security, you'll see these terrifying claims of a 150% rise in ghost tapping. Sounds like a total nightmare, right? But take a look at this official data from which. Contactless fraud actually represents a tiny fraction of overall card fraud losses. We're talking just 7%. A whopping 93% still comes from the old school methods like stolen numbers and phishing. But hey, here is some genuinely great news to reassure you. If you're using a digital wallet, you have a massive advantage against this proximity threat. Because Apple Pay and Google Pay require biometric authentication, your Face ID or your fingerprints, they are generally way safer than carrying a physical card. A locked iPhone just sitting in your pocket is not going to process a random tap-to-pay request from a scammer bumping into you. It requires you to actively unlock it. Plus, these systems use tokenization, meaning your actual real card number is never even transmitted in the first place. But, and this is a big but, that false sense of security leads us directly into a completely different trap. Scam number 2. In this scenario, the technology didn't fail at all. Instead, human psychology did. Here, you are actually willingly tapping your card or your phone. You know you're making a payment. The problem is that the merchant or the payment terminal itself is lying right to your face about what's actually happening. You can easily see how this plays out in everyday life. Imagine you're buying a snack from a street vendor, or maybe you're donating to someone collecting for charity on the sidewalk. The vendor looks at you and says, "It's just $5." So you pull out your phone, Face ID recognizes you, and you tap. Done, right? But what you didn't see is that the terminal was actually set up to charge you $200. With this scam, the fact that you used Face ID doesn't save you. Face ID strictly proves that it's you authorizing the payment. It absolutely does not prove that the merchant is honest. Scammers pull this off through a highly practiced three-part behavioral trick. First off, they rely on a rushed environment. Think crowded festivals, super busy transit stations, or loud street markets where you feel that social pressure to just hurry up and keep the line moving. Next up is screen manipulation. The scammer might casually angle the payment terminal away from you, maybe cover part of the digital display with their thumb, or verbally rush you into tapping before you can clearly read the screen. And finally, they count on notification blindness. Let's be real, most of us just swipe away bank alerts or we have them turned off entirely. You assume the charge matched what the guy said, so you don't even check the receipt until days later. This kind of psychological manipulation is so prevalent right now that state governments are actually tracking it. A recent consumer alert out of Michigan specifically warns about this, saying the reader might show no total or ask for a small donation, then charge a much higher amount. This happens right to your face. And because you technically initiated the tap, disputing it with your bank can actually be way more complicated than dealing with a completely unauthorized ghost charge. All right, so now that we know exactly how both the proximity attack and the merchant trap work, let's talk defense. We need practical steps to protect your wallet. The good news, you do not need to panic, and you definitely don't need to stop using Tap to Pay. You just need to tweak your habits slightly to shield yourself from both of these threats. So, here is your rapid-fire protection checklist straight from the security research. First, if you do carry physical contactless cards, grab an RFID blocking sleeve or a blocking wallet. This literally puts a physical wall between your card and the radio waves of a proximity attack. Second, and honestly, this is absolutely crucial, turn on instant transaction alerts for every single charge. Yes, even the $1 ones. It is the single fastest way to catch a ghost charge the exact second it appears, allowing you to freeze your card immediately. Third, whenever you can, use credit cards instead of debit cards. Credit cards generally offer much stronger fraud liability protections and keep scammers far away from your actual checking account. And fourth, if you're buying something and the screen is hidden, angled away, or covered up by someone's hand, just do not tap. And this brilliantly illustrates our golden rule for this explainer. If you take away absolutely nothing else today, I want you to remember this phrase: no visible total, no tap. Seriously, if you cannot clearly see those digital numbers on the screen verifying exactly what you are paying, keep your card and your phone firmly in your pocket. Take a second, slow down, and ask them to show you the screen. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you're buying a quick coffee or a street snack, how closely are you really going to watch that payment screen? By understanding the mechanics behind these two very different scams, you take away their power. If this breakdown helped you understand the real threats out there, please take a second right now to hit like, subscribe, and share this story so we can help others protect themselves and their wallets. Thanks so much for joining me, and stay safe out there.